Episode 122 of the podcast. This week we're talking about anthropomorphizing. Do dogs have emotions? Do they have the full range of emotions we do, or really no emotions at all? And there's some neat stuff about that. So let's talk about that this week. You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, a certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. Is it possible for us to talk about the emotion in dogs without being anthropomorphic? And yes it is. But we can't just assume that dogs think the way that people think. And that's where anthropomorphizing really comes in, is when we're like, well, I mean, what process is a dog thinking about? Like, are they thinking about revenge? Yeah, probably not. Are they thinking about fear? Yeah, probably. There are different levels of emotion. When you think about emotions, there's changes in the body. So there are some internal aspects to an emotion. Right? The changes in the body. There are changes in expression, the external definition, right? The external that we see with emotion when they are wagging a tail and looking happy, or tucking a tail and looking scared, right? Looking, the expression of. But the thoughts and feelings, we don't really know what's going on in their head. What we can do is we can know more about the neurobiology and how that works, and the changes that we see in the dog. And like I said, some of those are internal. Some of those are things like the heart rate goes up, the circulation increases because the heart rate goes up. The dog that's going into fight or flight mode, the body is getting sent signals that say, get out of here or fight your way out, but run, do something, right? We can measure those things, but we don't really know necessarily what's going on in their head. However, there's a lot of science that's way above my head. I'm going to totally own that. That's way above my pay grade, right? But there are some differences between a human brain and other mammals. However, I want you to think that there are a lot of things that are the same. A lot of things that are the same. And one of the things that came up in a recent webinar that I was listening to was the physiology of emotion is similar in dogs and people. The physiology, when you think about like the basic brain processes, those are similar in dogs and in people. So I think that some of our assumptions about emotion can have some validity to them. I think we can relate to that feeling of something I saw triggered a memory of something that I think is scary or something that I think is awesome, right? So our physiology is very similar. But we also express our emotions kind of in similar ways too. So, think about disgust. That was one emotion that came up. Disgust. Like, ugh. I mean, everybody can picture the face I just made. Ugh. And they say that's a very primal emotion because it's the one that you do when something might be poisonous or deadly or make you sick. Right? It's this primary kind of yuck, and each of us has something different that triggers that. As an example, some of those things don't make sense. Like, I really like cottage cheese, but my husband's like, yuck. Like, it's clumpy. It can't be good for you. I don't mind spiders, but cobwebs. They've just been sitting around collecting dead bugs and dust, like cobwebs gross me out. Spiderwebs, not as much. Spiders, no. Cobwebs. So, disgust. Ugh. That's one that I think that we have noticed dogs do. And that might be like, ugh, that you just gave them like a piece of fruit. And they're like, ugh, why would I eat that? Although, every dog is different. Every dog is different. But I think that we also can look at dogs and say that dog is happy, right? The expression of joy, fear, the expression of fear. We can look at a lot of things in their body language and also what their body is doing, to see if they look like they have joy, happiness, or fear, or anger. And anger was an interesting one that I was listening to this webinar, which was by Patricia McConnell, by the way, one of my favorites of all time. She has many books out. The Other Ends of the Leash is one of her big ones. Many, many books out there. She does a lot of speaking in the dog training industry. And if ever you read something of hers and you're like, I want to know more, she's always putting out more. Wonderful, wonderful speaker. And she speaks well to people who are not dog trainers, who are not PhDs in behavior. I think she has a really broad audience. Love her work. Anyway, she was talking about, fear and anger are so very, very linked that in the body, that fear and anger are really almost the same process. And if you think about that, oh yeah, because at the end, those are to go back to being safe. Right? The things that make you angry are because you feel like something's unsafe. Or I want to be safe and I want to go back to homeostasis. I want to feel healthy and happy and right again. And fear is part of that trigger, but so is anger, right? So think about some of these emotions that I think sometimes we assume that we're being anthropomorphic if we talk about things like fear or anger or happiness or disgust, right? I don't think those are anthropomorphic. I think we have some really pretty good evidence that we can observe animals acting in a way that is along those lines. Now, here are a couple that I think we have trouble with. Here's one that a lot of owners will come up with is guilt. Oh, he was guilty. He knew he did something wrong. So my problem with that one is that guilt kind of implies this longer process involving time. It's not just in the moment. It's not just a response. It's sort of like, I did something and now I know that the thing that I did is going to be making someone upset later because she just really wants the house to be pretty and I just spread trash all over the living room. There's a lot more to something like guilt. But what we're often seeing is the dog responding to us in a moment when we feel like they should feel guilty. And that's when anthropomorphizing really comes in. Oh, he knows what he did. Did he though? We don't know that part, but we know that he knows you're upset and he might be responding to your actions. He might be responding to your responses. To give you an example of that, if I'm in the kitchen and I drop a spoon and it drops on the floor and I'm frustrated with myself and I'm like, ugh, one of my dogs will hit the deck as if you beat him with sticks, right? He's giving the classic I'm guilty body language that owners would say, oh, look, he knows what he did. He knows what he did. He knows he's guilty, right? So we need to be careful about the anthropomorphizing, right? We don't really know if that's what he's responding to. Certainly, he didn't cause me to drop a spoon. He was on the other side of the room. But the kind of body language that we see is so easy for us to create a bigger story around. So we really need to be careful about some of these bigger stories. Another one of those bigger stories that I think we see a lot of is people saying a dog is jealous. Oh, he's jealous. He doesn't want her getting attention. And I really think that for most dogs, it's not so much about not wanting something for someone else, but a little bit more about that self-centered, I want all the attention for me. I want all the toys, I want all the cookies, I want all the attention. Can I get in the middle of everything? And much like little kids, and again, anthropomorphizing, but much like little kids, you have to teach your dogs to share. I have 2 border collies, and each of them have some dog aggression issues and some object guarding issues, and they had to learn to share. They had to learn. They didn't learn it on their own. We had to teach it. And there are rules, but I don't think that they ever thought that other guy shouldn't have something. It was just, I want all the things. All the things are belong to me. All the things are belong to me. So when we start talking about what emotions dogs feel and what emotions they're displaying, I think we need to be really careful that we're not creating bigger stories. Okay? Now, one of the things that they said in this lecture was that there are some core emotions One of them, so the primary core emotions, things that you could see across most mammals. And I'm saying mammals because we have a very similar kind of brain and system and a process. Those were disgust, fear, anger, happiness, and joy. And those were, those are believed to be shared between us and between dogs, right? Like, okay, those are kind of primary and they're in the moment, right? Now, secondary, more, she referred to them as self-conscious emotions. Secondary emotions were things like jealousy, guilt, shame. And you know what? You got to think about those as something that isn't in the moment, right? Like they're probably just responding to the way that we're acting around them. So in the next part, I'm going to talk more about how that relates to us when we're grooming or when we're teaching animals to be good for grooming, because there are a lot of weird stories that we get wrapped up in. And they start coming into these secondary emotions that are much more planned out. And I dare say a little bit more devious. So we'll talk more about that in the next part. If you're enjoying this podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes, and tell all of your friends. When we start talking about these secondary emotions, a little bit higher level emotions, jealousy, guilt, shame, I think that gets a little bit more anthropomorphic. I think what we're doing is we're projecting what we think the dog should be feeling. So let me give you some examples because I think that'll help bring the point home. When the owner says, "They poodled my doodle, and now look at him. He's so sad. He knows he looks stupid." Right? That's anthropomorphic. Do we know that this dog knows he looks stupid? Frankly, half of the time when you see "they poodled my doodle," first of all, doesn't look anything like a poodle. So any of you guys who are not groomers, that's one of the things that groomers are like, we're going to sprain an eye, rolling our eyes every time we hear it. Like, your dog doesn't look anything like a poodle. And he knows he looks stupid, right? It's often an owner who is complaining and is upset about the way their dog looks, and is probably looking at their dog with this kind of anger. Like, why did the groomer take off all of his precious mats? All right, that was super judgy. But if you're a dog groomer, you know exactly where I'm coming from. Like, why did they take off his precious mats? That's what makes him a doodle. So they're probably looking at their dog angry at a haircut. But their dog just came home from grooming and is like, "Hey, Mom, wow, why are you looking at me like that?" Right? This dog doesn't feel shame about his haircut. And that's part of this anthropomorphic kind of like, why would your dog care what his hair looks like? He probably cares a little bit more about the feeling, the sensation, right? Certainly there are times where a dog is a little bit weird and squirrely after getting all of their hair taken off because now they feel every breeze. Wouldn't you be? Like a little bit extra jumpy, like, I don't know, man, I was laying in front of that door and then this breeze came along and I jumped up and startled. And sometimes they're a little bit jumpy because we trim up hair around their eyes and suddenly they can see, you know? Again, non-groomers don't necessarily think about that kind of stuff. Like, when was the last time your dog was able to see everything? We just trimmed up around his eyes. So it's not necessarily that a dog is being jumpy or shame or guilt because of like, "Oh my God, I look so terrible. Oh, I look terrible." No, it's probably more about the physical sensation of having fur that's really, really short, something fresh haircut. Some dogs love their fresh haircut. So we also need to think about that. If you are an owner and you only know like 3 or 4 dogs, you know, maybe you knew them really, really well, but really your experience level is 3 or 4 dogs. And a groomer knows like so many more. That most of us as groomers know there are plenty of dogs who are like, "Boo-hoo, I got my hair cut. I got my hair cut." And they're like rolling around and they're like, feeling every breeze and they think it's great. So I think we need to really think about when we're looking at emotion, it should be something that we observe. Try to separate ourselves out from the story. Because I'm really not convinced that dogs feel shame. It would be pretty rare. I think most of the time what we're seeing is their reaction to our responses. We see something and they're like, oh, you look upset. Because there are plenty of dogs who would look at you like, you seem upset. I'm just going to go off in the other room and do something else. One of my guys, if you look upset, he's just going to be like, nah, well, sucks to be you, lady. I don't care. And then the other one, like I said, if I drop a spoon or something and I'm frustrated with myself, we'll give all of the classic guilty shame looks, right? So that's one of the examples I think that we do a lot of in the dog world is like this guilt and shame and, oh, it looks terrible, or, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Or here's another one that we hear often in the grooming setting is the dog gets home and the owners are like, oh, he's going to be mad at me for a long time. Why would he be mad at you? Oh, yeah, he's going to be mad at me. But why? In what way? What is he doing that makes you think he is mad at you? Because what I see, what I observe, is that a dog goes home and is just exhausted from the grooming process because, frankly, most owners don't have an hour to 2 hour thing that they do with their dogs. They don't even take them for a walk that long, never mind ask them to hold still on a table. The dog's exhausted, and he's got this new fresh haircut, and, you know, he was gone all day. He goes home and just wants to take a nap, right? That's different than I'm angry with you. Right? So we need to think about some of these stories that we create. Now, the other problem I see coming up a lot is this idea that every emotion that we describe is anthropomorphizing. Oh, well, you know, he's afraid of the nail clippers. He sees them and he gets really scared. Oh, that's anthropomorphic. Not if I can demonstrate that when this inanimate object shows up, this dog has a fear response. Like, that's not anthropomorphic. That's just the darn truth. That's obvious. And we've talked about it before, but to throw it out there, that's a classically conditioned response to an inanimate object that's been paired to nail trimming that was not pleasant. So, like, they have a memory. Oh, well, how would he remember that? Really? You think your dog can't remember when something was really unpleasant? Of course he can. They're wired to remember things like that because their whole nature is to avoid unpleasant and to seek out pleasant. Right? And ours is too. Think about it. Like, pleasant or unpleasant, right? If things are unpleasant, they're going to try to avoid it or make it go away. That's what fear and anger and aggression and stuff, like, that's what it's all about. Ooh, that's unpleasant. I don't want that. That's icky. Should we talk about it in terms of icky or not icky? But I think that sometimes we end up thinking like, oh, well, a dog wouldn't understand that. Or maybe somebody hit him with the clippers. Like, no, probably not. Probably not. Or he doesn't like going to the groomer because last time his haircut looked so stupid. They made him look like a poodle. They took off all of his precious mats. And you know what the thing is that, I know I'm really down on my my doodle owners today. But the thing is that if he's worried about going into the grooming shop, it could be a variety of things. It could have been his last experience. It could be a lack of experience. It could be this whole idea that, like, oh my God, my owner's going to leave me someplace weird. I'm not used to that. I haven't been left at weird places. Some dogs adapt to that really well. Other dogs do not. So we need to look at the bigger picture. Look at the bigger picture and look at its most simple answer. The most simple answer. Like when we talk about like a dog that, you know, starts to scream when you're lifting up his tail. Is that because he's angry? I don't know. Maybe. What else is happening? You know, is it because he's sore? I don't know. Maybe. What else is happening? But to say that he's not expressing any sort of an emotion because that would be anthropomorphic, well, I think that that's just, that's oversimplifying in the opposite direction. Like, of course they have emotions. Of course they have feelings and they have thoughts. Right? And just because we can't ask them, like, hey, Brock, Poe, looking at the guys in front of me right now, you know, like, what are you thinking right now? Yeah, you're right. I can't directly ask them and have them say, well, what we're thinking is why are you recording right now when it's such a beautiful day and we could be out playing ball? You know, they're not going to answer. But that doesn't mean that they don't have thoughts and feelings. But I think that the more we look at thoughts and feelings and emotions in our dogs, we need to break it down into what's happening right now. Right? They have memories, but it's based on what's happening right now. Right? Do I think that my dog who's afraid of thunderstorms thinks about thunderstorms every day? No. No, he thinks about it when a thunderstorm happens. Or when something reminds him of a thunderstorm, which could be high winds and rain. But he doesn't spend his days thinking, good news, it's a Monday and we didn't have a thunderstorm today, So we need to stay more in the moment and think about what we're seeing. What are we seeing? Instead of thinking that like jealousy or guilt or shame or jump right to like dogs don't have thoughts and feelings. And honestly, I got to say, I will put this out here too, because I think it's interesting that we are so much more likely to think that dogs have these higher processes for guilt, shame, jealousy, like revenge, these long-term kind of planning it out and the way I interact with other people. We're so much more likely to believe that. And then at the same time say, dogs don't love. It's like, why would you believe the other stuff and not believe that maybe they could love you, right? Which we don't know. Do we know? We really don't. But we can look at their behavior and observe and say, you know what? I can tell you, I don't know if my dog loves me. I have no way to measure that. But I can tell you my dogs want to be with me. My dogs like having time with me. My dogs crave time with me, whether that's time playing ball or time sitting on the sofa watching TV, right? So we can look at a lot of these things. They also like it when I put food in their dish. Yeah, they do. I gotta say, who knew? But for us to be thinking in terms of emotions, yeah, dogs do have emotions. But do they have the full range that we have? I'm not really sure they do. I think that some of those emotions require an awful lot of understanding somebody else's emotions and planning, right? To have guilt or shame really implies that you know someone else's emotions about what's going on. And I'm not so sure they do. And before we start acting about things like jealousy, guilt, shame, we should also be thinking, how is that affecting my interaction with the dog in this moment? Am I making it worse? Am I making it worse? Am I projecting some sort of an anger like the dog should know better for a dog who doesn't know any better? Right? And that's where a lot of these words get a little bit jumbled up. So I want us to kind of get away from some of these secondary emotions, right? Jealousy, guilt, shame, things that require understanding what somebody else feels or somebody else sees or somebody else experiences. Because, the jury's still out on that, right? But the things that directly affect your dog in the moment, yeah, I think they have a pretty full range of emotions about stuff like that. Yeah. And I think that that's observable. So if they are not responding to something, we can go, maybe they have no experience with this thing or this sound or this interaction we're having. But I wouldn't jump the gun and say they don't have emotions or they don't have feelings. So I think that when we talk about don't anthropomorphize, sometimes we go too far, way too far. Dogs are more than just a haircut. We should not be assuming that they're going to be on the grooming table and it's either hold still and don't fight me or you're a bad dog, right? Like, we can also spend some time teaching them to be comfortable with it because we want them to be comfortable with it. Because that's where so many of our behavior problems crop up as a dog who's not comfortable. Calm, comfortable, and cooperative. I know I say it all the time. But we want them to be calm, comfortable, and cooperative for a reason. Because that happens to be the dog who's good for grooming. So sometimes we're going way over the top with every emotion is anthropomorphizing. Dogs don't have those kind of emotions. Just hold him till he calms down. Grab him by his chin hair. He'll settle down because, he's just a dog. Don't overthink it. Or the opposite, which is overthink everything. And how does he feel about everything? How does he feel about this? How does he feel about that? Is he worried that his mommy won't like his haircut? Because I think that that's the other extreme. Someplace in the middle. I tend to be very moderate in so many different things. Like someplace in the middle observe what is happening in that moment. Because I think part of the fun of dogs is that they are very much in the moment. So it's not about like a plan for next week or how they're going to feel when they get home, or they're already plotting their revenge on their owners, or the opposite, which is like, oh, I had no idea what's going to happen next. I know they trimmed one ear. What a surprise. They're going to trim the other ear too. Like, most dogs have caught on to that. They're smarter than we take them for. But anthropomorphizing, yeah, it can be tricky, because the fact is that we do observe some emotions in dogs. And we should be thinking about that, because their emotional life, whatever it is, we can't talk to them, but we can read it and we can try to help them have a better experience. If you'd like more information, you can find me at Chrissy@happycritters.net, happycrittersdogtraining.com, or you can join the Facebook group, Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast, or the Facebook page, Creating Great Grooming Dogs. I really look forward to hearing from you.
If you're ready to go beyond the podcast, and I hope you do, I've made it really easy for you. If you go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com and click on your next step, you'll see all of the options. There's the Scholar Lounge community, there's the Modern Grooming Professional certification, there's Master Canine Stylist and Professional Canine Stylist diploma testings, there's the Behavior Lab for coaching and private one-on-one sessions with me, and of course the Master Groomer Behavior Specialist program. So go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com and click on your next step.